Thank you so much, Kentiana, and thank you all for being here today in what is a bit of an unusual celebration of the Anti-Poverty Journalist Prize. Normally we celebrate this with lots of people coming together, speaking, sharing experiences and concerns. But today with COVID, we have a very minimalistic approach physically to this event. But I would like to thank all the journalists who are here and the media who are here today to actually help us to expand and disseminate the message of today's event. Because really this is what this Anti-Poverty Prize, Journalist Prize is about. It is about expanding the message about the importance of journalism, right? And we heard from Gentiana how important journalism is, particularly when we have a crisis, when people's, the civic space, the space where we interact with each other, where we've seen during COVID, for example, how fake news, how misinformation has actually been obstructing the way that we've been able to respond to the pandemic, not only in Kosovo, but in all over the world. So we see the importance of journalism. And you are, I mean, it's needless to say, you are all professionals. I'm not a journalist, I'm married to a journalist, investigative journalist, so I know how important it is, and I know what pressure journalists are under. But also to say that without you, what will be the conduit of people's voices? Who would actually share information about society? Who would be there when no one can actually go out and see how the world looks like if you were not there to tell the story? So for me, any attack, and we've unfortunately seen a lot of attack on journalism itself, the ethics of it, because of the misinformation that has been actually been almost expanding in our society. But also the attacks on journalism in itself, which is actually an attack on the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, and actually an attack, in my view, about people's voices, the voice of the people. So we are here today to celebrate the work that you do, and particularly here with a focus on poverty. And why is it so important? Because very often, and I worked for the UN more than 25 years, and I've worked in countries with very high poverty rates. And we talk about poverty rates. We talk about numbers. In Kosovo, it's between 18%, it's 20%, sometimes it's 25%. It really never goes much below 20% in terms of poverty, but also extreme poverty is around 5%. But we talk a lot about these percentages and the rate, the increase rate or the decrease rate. And you know, we are very good at reading the statistics, but we very often forget to put a face behind the statistics. We even forget actually what do the statistics mean, and what do we actually need to do to decrease the number of people who live daily in poverty. So this is why it's so important to give a face and to give stories like the ones that we heard here. They are heartbreaking, and they exist everywhere. We see for COVID, for example, we know that for the first time in 20 years, poverty rates will increase. They will stop to decline. Because if it is one thing that the solidarity around the world has actually managed to do, although we don't see it very clearly, but we've actually seen poverty rates go down, particularly extreme poverty. But with COVID, for the first time in 20 years, they are not declining any longer. So this is why it's so important to talk about it, to show stories. You know, who are people behind our poverty rates? Who are people behind the statistics? And in fact, when you look at it, poverty is not, it's actually strange, because the highest number of poor people don't live in what we consider poor countries. They actually live in middle-income countries. Now, of course, there's a story to that, because most of the countries in the world right now are middle-income countries. so big countries, China, India, etc., with very big populations. But still, when you think about it, it's not sort of the least developed countries that have the largest number of people living in poverty. So that is something that we need to remember, because that also calls our attention to the fact of how difficult it is to combat poverty. Because it's not only a matter of GDP, it's not only a matter of your income, although very much related to it. And we saw here that you can't even get through, you know, two euros a day. Can you feed your family with 2 euros a day? But actually it's very complicated. It's very much associated actually with social services, having access to social services, having access to education, having access to social protection systems, having access to healthcare. And we've seen with COVID how fragile our societies are. Because we've seen all over. I'm from Sweden. In Sweden it was very clear. Our health system was not strong enough. Our elderly care system was not strong enough. So COVID has actually exposed to us the fragilities of our societies, and particularly the fragilities of our social services, our social protection systems, which is actually what actually sustains, in my view, what sustains the country. So that's why it's so important that we talk about it, because if we don't talk about it, we tend to forget who are people who live in poverty and why are they in poverty. We see very much how it's relating to income, lack of a job, but also access to education. We see how very often poverty is associated with women, large families, meaning lots of children who live in poverty. Often a child perhaps in that family that is disabled. We also see how poverty has very often a rural face, right? But so this is really why why we as the United Nations have supported this poverty prize, anti-poverty prize, for 15 editions now, for 15 years. And we are proud of it. All UN agencies have a mission to eradicate poverty. There are some agencies who work more clearly on it, like for example UNDP, but all agencies work to eradicate poverty because it is so multidimensional. It is so much linked to access to education, to health. It's so much linked to women's empowerment, women's economic empowerment, but also women's social empowerment, political empowerment. It's linked to environment. We see now a sort of new phase of poverty are those affected by the climate crisis, for example. So this is really, again, why I'm so happy to be here. The topic is, for me, it concerns the core of humanity, because if we cannot manage to provide for a decent living to all men and women and children around the world, then in my view, we have actually collectively failed. So again, I'm extremely pleased to be here in this hybrid event, out in the open. We have such a beautiful day and I adore this space as well. It gives me a lot of good vibrations. I know that the jury worked hard. They were not always in agreement about who should actually get the awards, which is very normal. I understand that there were a lot of good contributions this year. That we have some really exciting pieces as well that really give this, what we really would like to get through this event is to give this face to poverty. So I would like to thank the jury for working very hard. I would like to thank also the association for being our partner in this. I would also like to thank the UN agencies. We have actually 5 UN agencies who contribute to this award, and normally they are always with me in these events. We have from UNDP, the United Nations Development Programme, UNICEF, our Fund for Children, UN Women, our, of course, agency that coordinates gender equality in the UN system, UNFPA, our reproductive health agency, as well as UN volunteers. So I would like to thank them as well for being here virtually with us and spiritually. But let me finish here by also saying how much I count on our cooperation. The UN will work a lot with journalists, not let's say through projects, but our messages about human rights, our messages about the need to create a decent and dignified life for everyone, the need to combat environmental degradation, promote women's empowerment. So again, I would like to thank for your presence here today, and finally, very big congratulations to the winners of the Anti-Poverty Prize this year, 2020. Thank you so much.